26 Gutenberg Live Q&A. My name is Birgit Polly Haag and I'm your host and the curator of Gutenberg Times. Thank you all for watching. It's so great to have you. And in today's show, we will discuss the making of the post, open source, better solutions and more inclusive society, that the content creators at Yoast and the techies put together. And I'm extremely honored to have as guests 3 wonderful experts to discuss this and answer all your questions. We have Willemien Hallebeek. She's a manager of content at Yoast. Hi, Willemien, how are you this evening?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's awesome that you're here and that I finally get to meet you. I read a lot of your content. We also have with us Anne McCarthy, developer relations wrangler at Automatic and on loan to the WordPress open source project. She's also co-host of the show. Good afternoon, Anne. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
That's awesome. And then we have Omar Reiss, partner and CTO at Yoast. Hi, Omar. Welcome to the show. And thank you for all 3 of you taking the time out of your day and be with us together. So how are you doing?
Great, great. Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Well, and welcome to Bob from Las Vegas. And who else is in there? Yeah, well, use the chat window to let us know more about you, dear listeners. So before we do proper introductions, in less than a minute, I hope, I have a few housekeeping notes and an announcement. And this is going to be a mixed conversation. So we have demos, we have the questions that we have, and then we have your questions. And if you have questions, please add them to the YouTube chat on the right, or use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen to let us know your questions. And we will give answers in between segments. It's, yeah, we will always, so put them in here so they're in the queue and we can get right to them. Feel free also to share your thoughts and comments in the chat, but please be kind. Even if you disagree, this is a family-friendly endeavor. Yeah, and before we go into the deep weeds, and I have you here and your attention, State of the Word, the annual keynote by WordPress co-founder Matt Mullenweg is next week. Because of WordCamp US was canceled, this is going to be a live stream event, simultaneously streamed to the WordPress YouTube channel, the WordPress Facebook page, and the WordPress Twitter account. So mark your calendar, it's on December 17th. At 1600 UTC, that is 11 a.m. in Eastern, it's 8 a.m. Pacific, and it's 5 o'clock Middle European time, I think. And for the Q&A part of the live stream, and that's something totally new, you can pre-record your question via a video, and a big emphasis on landscape format, not landscape. And send it before the event. Actually, the deadline for that is tomorrow, so you don't have a whole lot of time left. And detailed instructions are in the news post on the WordPress.org. So go there. Yes, so that's out of the way. I'm thrilled you're all here, so let's start. Omar, it's been a while that we connected on a WordCamp. I think we met in 2019 or so, 18 in Nashville.
18, yeah.
So you're a partner with Yoast, one of 4, now 6, I heard, or the board is now 6. And you're the Chief Technology Officer. What exactly are you doing with Yoast? What's your responsibility?
Well, I'm just in charge of everything that has to do with technology at Yoast. So the development teams, the QA teams, and the DevOps teams all report to me. and I am also responsible for software architecture. So basically the design of the code itself.
All right, very interesting. Are you also going to fix my printer, or you don't have any printers anymore, right?
No, that's the only part of technology that I'm not responsible for at Yoast. That's part of the operations side of things.
All right, well, thank you. Yoast is, after Automatic, the biggest corporate contributor to the open source project, WordPress open source project. So how deep are you involved in that, of this part of the Yoast team?
Well, I'm starting to get quite involved again. The team is led by Francesca Marano, who you might know.
Yes.
Also led a couple of WordPress releases. And I think we have meetings every Tuesday where we discuss our efforts, and I'm generally present there. And it kind of got the contributor virus, reactivated, and I plan to work on some build tooling stuff for WordPress 5.7. So yeah,
right.
Ready to get back in the game.
Okay, excellent. And we had many chats, conversations on Slack about the various aspects of Gutenberg adoption, events, and the testing part of it. I'm so thrilled that you're a co-host on the show today. You work as developer relations wrangler on loan to the WordPress project. What exactly do you do?
It's a good question. I also just want to say it's so awesome to actually be able to collaborate with you on this. I feel like we talk so much, and it's really an honor. So thank you for having me. But yeah, I focus on the developer experience, whether that's through creating better product feedback loops through things like the full site editing outreach program or calls for testing, trying to help get developers better connected both with each other and with the wider community and sharing resources. I helped kind of start a thing called Hallway Hangouts, which a bunch of people have done, which is super exciting. Yeah. Trying to make it easier for new devs that they're first coming in to get acquainted with the community and get onboarded. So there's been a couple of different like documentation initiatives with that. Most recently, if you join Core Editor for the first time, you'll get a nice little Slackbot ping introducing you to things. So trying to be a bit creative there, especially while we can't gather in person. And probably the last thing is just community-wide communication to get people excited about what's happening with development. And kind of just making it known in a way that's user-focused and just builds excitement about the future of WordPress. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, but that's a lot of work, and I'm glad that you're doing it. So Willemien, it's such a pleasure to meet you, manager of content. Knowing your work in SEO, that sounds like a big job. What is it exactly that you do, and how many people do you have doing it?
Well, it's a great job. It entails a lot of content. Yoast.com has a lot of content. My main focus used to be on our blog, but since a short while, I'm also responsible for all the content on Yoast.com. So that means we have a lot of help pages, feature pages, product pages, and I'm responsible for the entire thing. So make sure what's created, and check the coherence and consistency of it. So because we're growing, more people are working on our content, and we want to prevent that we're doing on one side something and on the other side the same thing. So yeah, so like the overview, the overall responsibility of the content. How many people? Yeah, that's actually quite a difficult. Well, I have 3 people in my blog team. We're with 3 actually, and 3 people from our academy team. They make our courses, but also contribute a lot to the website. And then we have some people who actually work on the website, but are not necessarily in my team. But people creating content for our product pages, feature pages. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Who writes documentation at Yoast?
Documentation, I think, Omar, I think it's Jimmy who writes for the dev portal documentation, right?
Yeah, even Yoast himself still writes a lot of documentation. Jono,
Yeah.
Jimmy, that's a lot of the development documentation. Then the support team does a lot of the help documentation.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the academy team recently rewrote a lot of that stuff as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We had a huge knowledge base, which was transformed to our help section of the site, and Academy did a great job in making that, very easy to understand for people. Because if you're looking for a help article, it needs to be, understandable for many people. So
yeah, it kind of needs.
It's now mainly the Academy job. Yeah.
It needs all the green lights on the Yoast plugin, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You can read all of that on our website. Yeah.
So taking this open source story it's our topic today as an example. So what's your process from idea to publishing? And so what's the genesis pretty much of that post on your site?
Yeah, and the idea, I think Omar can tell that story best because he was there when the idea was born. I just took it on later, but
okay.
You can tell something about the creation process.
Exactly.
That's been mostly your job. Let me keep it brief. Like I think I was with Marike at a WordCamp, Marike, our CEO, and she gave a really great talk about gender stereotypes and prejudices. And it's a really, really nice talk. If you're into diversity, I think it's a really nice talk to also go look up on WordPress.tv. And then I was like, at Yoast, we've traditionally been really strong in our core values, and we've a couple of things that are important to us. Diversity is one, open source is another one. We're like, we have all these great stories that we tell on WordCamps. Wouldn't it be awesome to have these in a digital story format on Yoast.com, as well as really rich content that is, dynamic and interactive, and with Gutenberg being present at the time, that was actually something that seemed really attainable. And we basically said, let's go, let's turn our important sort of core value stories that are close to our hearts. Let's turn them into digital stories on Yoast.com and really give people something special. And then we turned to Willemien to create that. How does that process go?
Then I was involved.
Go ahead.
So I got this idea, and then what we did was I started first. We thought about like what do we want to tell people, of course. And then I started gathering content we already had on our website, because we had some not stories, just more posts about why open source is great, or how to contribute. We had like smaller parts of the story already on our website. So I started gathering that and writing a complete story of it, so we would really have like a long read, and then I started thinking about what is a nice way to visualize this. So we also had videos, and we had copy on some parts. I thought about a quiz, for instance, that we could add. So that was just a big document, actually, with ideas and content, some links to videos, and that went to our design department. And they've created this awesome design of the page, and they already kept in mind, the blocks that were created previously for the prejudice story. So because they kept that in mind, it was, in fact, it was quite easy to create the content in the editor, because the blocks were there, the content was there.
All right.
It was mainly, it was just mainly getting it in, and making sure it all looks fine on the front end.
Yeah, and I think it would be a good occasion here to have Omar kind of walk us through the back end, just scroll through the front end and then also through the back end of it, and kind of talk about the segments. And you can certainly, both of you, kind of talk about things. What do you think?
Definitely.
Okay.
Let me show you the page.
Yeah.
I've just for reference, I've also opened up the first one that we made, which is the gender stereotypes and prejudice one. And you see that it's also got animations. The open source one, we left it out for this time, but something that you can also do with Gutenberg, and I might show a little bit later. But basically, most of the stuff you see here, even this probably, it can be done with Gutenberg natively, which is really nice. So we open, even though in our case, this table of contents block, because it's we generated it with a special block, but we'll show you about that later. This was added later, right, Willemien?
Yeah, it was added later because we it was actually some feedback from Yoast. He thought, well, maybe we could have something in the beginning, just making clear, what you can find in this story, because it's a long story. So you want to, take people by the hand and already give them some idea of what's in it.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, like right at the start of the story, you see this sort of card game where you can basically do sort of a quiz where you can guess sort of, is this washing machine, is it partly or created with the help of open source technology? And then you can guess, and you're like, well, no, it's a washing machine, it's not open source. And it's like, no, oops.
I love this. I thought this was such a cool way to like bring home the power of open source and engage with the page.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. This part was really, because I thought, well, maybe people know some software is open source, but perhaps they don't know, washing machines can be open source. So I started
this kind of quiz sort of format. We actually reused it from the stereotype, where you have to choose if this is a stereotype or a prejudice. And then basically this sentence, is it a prejudice? And they're like, yes, well done, it's a prejudice because it makes a harmful judgment based. And it's the exact same, kind of quiz format where you have to guess if it's one or the other, but it's a completely different game because, this is aimed at understanding the difference between a stereotype and a prejudice. And here it's aimed at sort of simply guessing if open source is involved or not. And you can even imagine a true or false game or whatever. Like there's many different things that you could use this block for. But the funny thing is that, like for instance, behind here, you can see a nice cover. That's something that is just using Gutenberg natively. I'll show you that in a minute. Yeah, so it's got all kinds of this kind of interactive elements. You can see that there's a regular video here, and that it has a sort of special functionality that you can read also the transcript of that video. So it's in there if you want to read it, and if you want to hide it, you can hide it. So that makes it a really dynamic story. You can watch the video and it will tell you a little bit more, and then you continue farther into the story. And yeah, like I said, most what you can see here, this is just, you can do this in Gutenberg. There's nothing needed to make this work. So this is just an image in a column block, and yeah, we'll show you that later. Which I think is it's amazing because what we set out to do, like, you know, you have a couple of these examples of big publishers like the New York Times who create these really compelling interactive digital stories. And they often sort of, that's really costly to do, and they need designers and developers to make it. And they basically, all of them have tried also turning that stuff into a framework that can be reused to create other stories. Well, basically with Gutenberg and a few blocks, you have this framework. It's really easy for anyone to sort of create this sort of rich, compelling content by themselves. It only requires a few blocks and a really nice block editor. So yeah.
That reminds me of the snow article from New York Times. And I think Mel Choice might have given a WordPress TV, I think it's on WordPress TV, like a talk about that, of how you can like recreate that in Gutenberg and how much it's unlocked. It's super cool.
Oh, I'd love to see that talk. Like that's
I'll drop a
exactly
link
the
if I
kind
can
of
find it.
that's exactly the kind of example that I was thinking about, and it's also the example that I gave. Like I think about 4 years ago in the cafeteria of Yoast.
Yeah,
I gave a presentation about digital storytelling, and I gave that example as well. It's like so cool what you could do, but it was so hard to make that at that time.
Yeah, they spent months on that, right? Like it was a huge undertaking for them to do that. No.
Exactly. You can see there's some design things that are being reused. I'll show you some examples from the other story as well, what we did. Let me look if I can find another compelling blog. But this is the important sort of, this is what there's this Strive for the Future talk here, which is a talk by Yoast and Marieke, and it's also sort of, it's been done in different forms also by Yoast alone, and Yoast and Marieke did it together in a couple of occasions, which is really sort of our story about open source. And that story sort of explained here in WordPress.tv, but then it's also completely explained here in the whole tragedy of the commons and how open source can help lead to a sort of reverse tragedy of the commons, and how can we get to a victory of the commons. And basically the whole fight for the future thing in WordPress is explained and why it's important. Like it's a really important story for us, and we really like to tell it. Yeah, you see the fight for the future is explained here.
Right. Yeah. And are these column blocks or are those media and text blocks?
We should watch it. So let's briefly, go to the back end to see what this looks like. So let's first go to those blocks that we were just looking at. And we were looking at this one, right?
Oh, they're column blocks. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
So these are column blocks, and it's just, I think just here, if you look at this, like this is, I think it's a group block. Oh no, that's a column block, and then this is a group block. And then these are columns. It's so incredible what you can just do with, plain old Gutenberg right out of the box.
Yeah. So that's a gallery. I assume the pictures up there.
Oh yeah, we're looking at this one. Which one did you say? Gallery?
Oh, there are 4 pictures kind of in the further up, I think it was.
Oh yeah, this one.
Those 4. Yeah.
Right. So it seems like this is also a column block with multiple images.
Yeah.
And then 2 right below each other. And this is a group as well. Yeah. So you can see the structure here. Yeah.
It's called the list view now. It was the block navigator. Just kind of a little tidbit here. We changed the interface every few months.
There's been quite some interface changes, but fortunately it all still works.
Right.
I think a good thing to take a look at now is how we use ACF, because that's made it so much easier to do this stuff. We actually have a native table of contents block in Yoast SEO, but it doesn't include this sort of image format. So if you go to that. You see these images that are in front of the table of contents, and then basically the sub headings. We created a sort of custom fields block for that. Where you can, basically this is, I think it's a repeater where you can have multiple links and, well,
these are the three sections. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, the downside of this is that it's not 100% what you see is what you get, but the upside of this is that it's really easy to give rich elements, interactive elements, and just fill them with the data and the content that's needed.
Yeah, even more so with the quiz, I would think.
This is this is a really good example. So this is the quiz. The funny thing is, what I really find compelling about this is that you see here, there's a cover block, there's a group inside there with a heading and a paragraph, which is these two, and then the Yoast Stories card game. And it all just seamlessly works together. I think it's really miraculous how intuitive that is.
Yeah. So in ACF you create your field group, and then you tell in the field group that is for a blog, and then
let me show you the card game. So here, this is our field groups in ACF, and basically what we did is we defined up front what a card game is in terms of data. Here we've defined that. We're saying basically a card game is a repeater block, and every sort of card game has its own image, option A, option B, statement, and explanation. And yeah, well, that's then what you get here to put there, and then basically what ACF requires you to do to turn a sort of field group into a block is you need to register a template for that block, and then the template can use the fields, and then that's basically how you can use it as a block. And it works.
How quickly did you realize you needed to use ACF for this? Like, when did you try to use Gutenberg first, and then it was like, this isn't going to work, like we have to switch over? Or did you lead with this?
No, basically we knew that it wasn't possible to do it with Gutenberg natively without coding a block. So we would have to create a custom block. Then you can do it with ACF, which is really simple to do. Or you could try to come up with especially if you have a little bit of development power, but anybody who's able to create a WordPress theme or even tweak a WordPress theme could create an ACF block. If you want to create a custom sort of JavaScript powered, what you see is what you get, a block in Gutenberg, it's much more work basically. You have to completely think through the entire interface of how to interact with that, and yeah, it's really not trivial to do, especially if you want to make something dynamic and interactive.
Have you tried any other of the non-JavaScript block builders like Block Lab? It's now Genesis Blocks Pro, I think it's called. The other one is called Lazy Blocks.
I haven't tried those yet. But I have created a lot of custom blocks sort of from scratch. Also, Yoast SEO's got a couple of one. So we are definitely familiar with how to create native blocks, so to speak. But I haven't tried the other sort of custom block solutions that are out there.
Yeah, I did a few months back, maybe a year and a half ago, kind of a summary on that on the W Tavern from creating blocks without JavaScript and comparing all three of them. So I'm gonna try if I can grab that and share it in the in a bit. Yeah. So where did you? Oh, and then you wanted to show us the video, right? The special features.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you this example because I think this is kind of it would have been nice to create this as a native blog, because this is a video. Like, a video is something that the Gutenberg editor actually knows how to do. But then again, because we also wanted to have a transcript, we sort of took a shortcut, and it was just the easiest thing to do this in an ACF blog, because I would only have to worry about the template, and well, kind of works. But then again, this would not have been hard to do more natively, and maybe if we put in like 2 hours extra, then this could have been nicer, better experience.
Well, I'm always on the impression, if it works, why change it?
Yeah, no, that's true as well.
It also adds a nice experience for people who are building the content to kind of prime them to include a transcript, which I think on the content side, I'm sure that's also helpful.
Yeah, it's absolutely helpful. Yeah, because not everybody can listen to audio on their computers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. That's why these are added.
and
I think I'd like to show. Oh, sorry.
No, I just want to say, like, we added them to these 2 videos.
Yeah, so I'm just making a call for our audience here. So if you have any questions to Willemien and Omar, please kind of fill out use the Q&A on the bottom of the screen, and then we can kind of read them here for both of them to answer. Just not seeing any, so I think I'll need to coax a little bit more.
I'd love to know about the animations. I know, Omar, you said you might show some of how that's done.
What I wanted to show you is there's two things about this post that I really like, that I also wanted to showcase, because it shows a little bit more what's possible even. Yeah, so all of these animations are powered by a library called Lottie. And Lottie is basically a JavaScript library that allows you to animate SVGs in a certain format. And if you use, I think, Adobe, some kind of Adobe product, it's really easy to make those animations with Lottie. It's a library by Airbnb. And basically what I did is I included Lottie with Yoast.com. So it now comes with Yoast.com, and you can now directly export these sort of animated SVGs from Adobe and upload them to Yoast.com and use them in any content, basically. So this was an experiment to do that, and I think it's really cool that sort of Yoast.com now by default supports these animations in the block editor. And I actually got it to work. This is gonna be a live demo risk, but I'm still gonna take it. Let me see. I think they work also in the editor themselves, which I was like, my nerd heart beat a little.
Had one of those moments.
Yeah, so because I want when I upload those images, and I hope I can find an example. Yeah, that I can see them animate in the editor.
Wow,
that would
really
be
cool.
the magic moment for me. And that I got to work. So yeah, that was a really big victory. And a lot of fun.
And then how you're doing it at all? Like, have you all written up like the process you went through to integrate the library?
Yeah, actually, I think I do.
That'd be super cool to see.
Yeah.
Omar Reiss.
I'm glad we all Google the same way for things.
Yeah, so I wrote
Yoast articles wouldn't be showing in Google.
So in 2020, I wrote this post, Digital Storytelling in the Age of Blogs, where I explained every step, and basically the basics, just use the block editor. and I also showed how we did a lot of the stuff and also the templating and stuff, because one of the things that I was excited about, and I also show in this post, is that we actually use the Yoast FAQ blog. Let me try to find it.
Glad you mentioned that.
So here in this post, we use this is just the Yoast FAQ blog, and you can see that this are men smarter than women, and then you see that this format is not what you see on the front end, because what you see on the front end is this. It's where the answer is actually hidden, and these prejudices are shown, and then you sort of first get to think about it, and then you show the answer, and you hopefully get confronted with something to think about even more. So what I did is, on the front end, I filtered the blogs, the Yoast FAQ blog, and came up with a different representation of the same blog, which sort of turned it a little bit in this game format. And it's just one other example of how incredibly flexible the blog editor is and blogs are, and to use to your advantage. I thought it was a really compelling, nice example of how we can reuse an existing blog actually made by a plugin, in this case our plugin. But yeah, that was really exciting for me. So in terms of demo, I think that's the most important thing. Is there anything you would like me to showcase or show, or?
Well, what does the people in the audience think? All right. Well, I certainly have a few questions.
I was going to say, I'm also happy to jump in with some too, because this has been really fun to dig into.
So when do you decide between kind of using something like ACF, or do you want to do custom build blocks? Is certainly one that I'm always struggling with. Also, what does Willemien think about ACF versus a custom build block and all that?
Well, yeah, I'm really the least technical person here. I think so. Well, for us, yeah, I think the nice thing, if you really use a block, is for us, it's most important that you can see what you get. So yeah, if it gets closest to that's if you're creating the content in the back end, it's just so nice that you don't have to switch all the time between preview and go back to the editor, and does it really look like what you want to. So
yeah,
that's mainly
that's a very important one.
and I think, well, yeah, it's just nice to see to do most stuff in the editor whenever it's possible. What Omar said as well.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, go ahead, Omar.
No, I just stopped to share. If anybody wants to see anything, I can always share again.
Yeah, sure.
But I like to see you large as well, so that's really nice.
Yeah, I think it's important to what you say, Willemien, in terms of well, on that blog or post, you only had maybe 3 videos in ACF and that quiz. But when you look at larger publishers' websites, yeah, I went to the WordCamp for Publishers, and one of the speakers showed 9 pages of ACF fields with all kind of different data, but only when you hit preview, you were able to actually see what you put where and where it will show up. So I think that what you see is what you get is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes our job a lot easier. Yeah, that's I think.
I totally agree with the long list of ACF. That is not a great user experience. What we've created a couple of dynamic blocks, because this is what we're talking about, basically blocks that are rendered in the PHP via template. That's very easy to create. what I think I prefer in those blogs, and maybe the other examples that you gave just now, Birgit, do it more like that, is where you have sort of this server-side render component in the editor, where you actually see what is being rendered in the editor, and you do the editing in the sidebar. And then it's on mobile, it is not the best experience maybe, but it's a really nice experience on desktop, where you can actually see what you're editing. That might be a good middle ground. But generally, the reason why we chose ACF blocks for this kind of stuff is just also a cost reason, because it's just it's really easy, much easier to do, and cheaper. Yeah.
I wanted to quickly, there's a attendee question that we can ask.
All right.
If you're game.
Excellent.
So the question's anonymous, and it's, how about site speed in such long stories? Were there any measurements done in terms of site speed, both front end and back end?
Good question.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
Well, it's a really good question. I remember having the question the first time. I don't know. Did you look at site speed for the open source post, Willemien?
We did after we did after we posted it. We checked it, and we found out we could improve some images. So we really we turned them all into PNG to make sure they can be with Cloudflare. They now are they're now made into a WebP, and I think that's the fastest way, and to make them as small as possible, actually.
I think they're also lazy loaded now, right? So
yeah.
When you scroll, they load.
Lazy loading. And of course, I don't know about the animations, if that those are actually
SVGs, yeah.
Yeah.
So the animated images, like I remember also looking at that, they're not very big, but there are a lot of them on the page, and I think in the end we also, but I should check if that indeed works. But I think we also managed to lazily load those SVGs.
Yeah, I think it's always a little bit of a technical. So what's speed and what's perceived speed? Yeah. So as soon as I can read something very quickly, I don't care that much how long it takes. That where I'm not scrolling to is not there yet. Yeah, it's it kind of comes later. So I think that have you done any measurements in that regard, or optimized your site like that? The text is not, that the site doesn't have to be fully built to show people something, or fully rendered.
I think most the main thing that we lazily load is the images. So those are not rendered on page load, but all the rest is mostly it's entirely cached in Cloudflare. So generally, Yoast.com pages, even the bigger pages, are really quite fast to load because they're completely cached and nothing has to be sort of made ready to download before it can come to your browser.
It's definitely something to keep in mind when you create a story like this.
Does that answer the question of anonymous? All right. Yes. Okay. Good. So we had I had also a question that we put together. So now that it's out there, and how you built it, if you had it to do all over again, would you do anything differently, or what is it to improve?
I can take, but after looking again at the other story, I just really regret that we didn't add more animations in it. Yeah, because they mostly make it just more fun to watch, more dynamic. But they also take more time to, to be created, to be developed. So it's, yeah, it's kind of a
The victory of the
trade-off.
commons, I feel like that could have been a really cool, like people cycling together kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool animation.
Yeah,
To really make it alive, right? Yeah, there's lots of ideas, right? We are actually planning on another big one. I think it's coming out in a couple of weeks.
Schema. We're doing one on schema.
It's a big one on schema. But the idea from the start was to have a framework and to improve on it. So we wanted to see. Basically, we wanted to just see how difficult is it to create a framework for digital storytelling now that we have this awesome block editor. I think the experience with this second post, this second story was that it didn't require a lot of extra work to build it technically. So we got a new table of contents idea there, and it was built by a front ender. But it was added to what we had already, and mostly we could build with the building blocks that we had. I do think that it would be nice to explore the other options, for instance, that you shared. I think atomic blocks, is that one? Or
atomic blocks. Yeah, there. So you mean the JavaScript, and not using JavaScript, but templating thing for that?
Right.
Yeah, one is the Genesis blocks, actually, which is the Block Lab out of Australia, was bought by WP Engines, and they're now Genesis Blocks Pro, I think.
Right.
Yeah, and they have a free version in the repository. And that was actually quite powerful. But I was actually, when I scrolled through this and said, now listening to you, have you thought about, or would it be even faster to put together if you had section block patterns instead of kind of having the three? I can see that the columns block with the group block with the different background and with the different images in there take actually quite a bit to put together from scratch. If you had a block pattern, then you could just kind of pull it in and say, okay, I have these two guys in to the right and with text, and then the middle column, and just kind of pull it in with the background. Yeah. Have you thought about doing that and kind of improving on your framework?
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like, I haven't thought about it yet, but it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, sounds like a dream for a content editor to be able to, just drag it in and
yeah.
I made a site recently and I did something like that with some patterns where at first I was like manually copying, pasting, removing the stuff I didn't want. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, I can just have a pattern, have it and go and just plug and play. So for content, it's amazing, especially.
Did you need to do any development for that, or is it something that you can do as a content editor?
No, I did it just as like on the side. A lot of it was done for this site in particular. I did it on WordPress.com, which has come in like with built-in, like I think 117 block patterns. So this was just kind of like a for fun. I have a lot of for fun sites,
nice.
But it was kind of showing the future of where we're going to go. I'll link to the WordPress.com pattern library. It's pretty.
Well, there is a plugin out there by JB Audras, where you can actually convert your reusable blocks to block patterns, kind of get over that problem that if you change reusable blocks, you change it on all of them instead of using it as a template. And here in his plugin, he has a feature where you can actually transfer it. And then there's another plugin out there called Block Pattern Builder. And the author is Blockmeister. and they also let you kind of highlight a block and then have a menu in the more options block save as a block pattern. Yeah, so content creators can at least start out with that. Yeah, and if you need them tweaking, yeah, you can hand it to your designer because it's pretty much templating. Yeah, that can be added to the theme. Yeah, there is a resource list of all the things, block patterns on the Gutenberg Times. I think it was the second last post that I did, and it has a lot of additional ideas on themes that have come with block patterns. So it's definitely something to take a look at.
Did you all explore or have you looked into Google's Web Stories plugin? Because I feel like they're trying to accomplish like a similar thing. I haven't played around with it yet though.
Yeah, we're actually experimenting a bit with that as well. And it was really nice that we got a tweet from Pascal Bierkler, who is also working on the web stories, and he contacted us saying, well, this is actually
like perfect use case.
Yeah, this would be a perfect web story. So
yeah,
we're definitely, I think we're now in the process of getting it on Yoast.com, and we really want to start creating some web stories. And maybe this, well, I don't know if we're going to choose this topic or another one, but yeah, definitely something we'd like to, get. It will be like, yeah, we have to play around with it and see what we can make with it. It might be a bit, shorter. I think the content needs to be even more snackable than what we have here. But
did you struggle with that at all, of trying to make something like snackable, like you said, versus like a long form, or have you intentionally gone more long form with this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's intentionally more long form because we really want to tell the story well, and otherwise it gets, snackable is nice, but this is something we like, well, maybe elaborate a bit more.
I'm all for long form, so yeah, consider me a fan.
Me too. But I liked how you broke it up. Yeah, so there were, it's kind of snackable to kind of come back and say, okay, yeah, this is the topic, and then you have bullet lists and not this wall of text that some others have. So you kind of really
Best
did
of
it
both worlds.
both worlds. Yeah, and having a good designer as well. Yeah, with the iconography, even if it's just a non-animated thing, it still kind of breaks up the text so much. Yeah, my favorite blog right now is the media and text blog, because the image can change the size of it depending on the text. So you can fill the full bleed of the column with an image, and then you have the text next to it. So I really like that. Yeah. So
so it's dynamic to the amount of text you.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a long picture, you don't need to have long text to go with it. Yeah. You can say crop it to the text size, and that's really good.
That's really smart. Yeah.
So use it a bit more.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking all these columns or all this media and text blocks at the beginning. Yeah, and I can see that columns from the idea is really easy to grasp. Yeah, okay, I have 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns, but then so I really like that. Wow. Yeah, so we don't have any more audience questions. Do you have any more questions, Anne, that you want to ask them?
I'd love to know, like, if you have any more stories coming up, just like content wise. Is there another like WordPress related, open source, maybe inspired story that you all are trying to tell?
Or
like a next version, because these have been really fun to dig into.
Well, we wanted to do the next story on schema and structured data. So that will be coming up.
There's a lot of things to do. That's reviews, it's recipes. I'm thinking about
but also just the higher level philosophical
I think
story is super interesting. It's like it's basically the story of open data and of the sort of evolution of the web. So that's also something near and dear.
So you're going back to Adam and Eve, practically. Wonderful.
Not sure if we go back that far, but no,
It's only
definitely.
about a few thousand years, yeah. So Andrea had a question here from the audience. Based on your experience working in the blog editor for complex posts like this, is there a particular request you'd like to make to the team working on Gutenberg?
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Apart from switching off the full screen?
Thinking.
I'm leaving it to our content manager, but otherwise I also have a request, but I think it's already on the roadmap.
Okay. Ooh, that's a hard question. Yeah, well, to think about it. Yeah, maybe we had to, had some help from front end, making tweaks to headings and stuff to be able to move them easily. I don't know if that's something,
Drag and drop is a big thing.
It's maybe the alignment, kind of
the
full
alignment,
width. Or
alignment?
Yeah.
Sure if that's,
alignment options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More control on, do you want to control line heights as well? Yeah, sometimes it's kind of it's sometimes a little bit too compressed, and if you have more line height control.
Mhm.
Sometimes you might have like a heading in the design, which I think is probably already possible, where you have a relatively small heading, but you need a bigger heading level, or that's probably already possible. I can almost only imagine that to be a problem today. Oh no, you have a font size.
Yeah, there's a font size you can. I regularly mess with that.
Yeah.
For the heading, yeah.
I would personally really like collaborative editing features. So that would.
Okay.
So it would make me completely skip Google Docs in writing, and I really like collaborative editing personally for whatever I do. It's not for everyone maybe, but especially the commenting part of that.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be in the same document with someone necessarily, but I would really like some editorial workflows where you can comment on stuff and give suggestions.
Yeah.
Get the heading part, focus on that. That's the best idea, definitely.
Yeah. What I struggle with is that if I have an older post, and when I edit it, I have to kind of copy it, somebody else edit it, and then get it back, because I cannot finish it in one session, and I cannot schedule these revisions. And that's kind of one thing. But collaboration is on the roadmap. You're right, Omar.
I just dropped a link to something Riyadh experimented with.
Riyadh experimented with it. Yeah, quite a bit actually. He has a site up there. It's called asblogs. Asblogs.com. But it's on the roadmap for the next phase. So I think 2023 or something like that.
Yeah.
Or 22, yeah. I think 21 is already over, and I'm thinking 22. So, but that's not right. It's not right. 20 is almost over.
We're still just trying to get through 2020. I think
there's also already a plugin offering it, and it's really, and I really like Riyadh's work on this as well. And I remember when he tweeted his AS blogs out. It's good to be reminded of that. It's but it's just so exciting. I want to see it, and also we will probably utilize it if we have something like that in Yoast SEO. We can imagine using a sort of commenting system to give inline feedback really granularly. That would be, I think, could turn into a really amazing experience where you sort of enable sort of SEO mode, and you get really granular SEO comments, sort of automated editorial workflows, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really promising.
We already have like the readability analysis who says your sentences are too long. So if you could give this kind of feedback on a more granular level, that would be super helpful, I think.
Yeah, Andrea, you indeed specialize in hard questions. That's okay.
Oh, it's really cool to see you also like the collaborative editing.
Yeah, so much, yeah. So, but we are at the end of our show. I could probably talk with you another 2 more hours, but I want to, let you go. And we probably can do this again. So, and thank you for the questions from the audience. And at this point, I have 2 more questions for you, all 3 of you. So do you have any announcements that you couldn't get to talk about before, but you want people to keep in mind? And if people want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way? Willemien, you want to start?
Yeah, I don't really have any announcements, I think.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, you can find me on Twitter, and reach out to me on willemien@yoast.com. So
By
that's,
email, yeah.
that's
Cool.
the best,
Yeah.
fastest way.
Yeah, Omar?
So the best way to reach me is either Twitter at Omar Reiss or on the WordPress Slack, where I typically respond quite fast. And no announcements here either.
No
But
announcement.
I would like to say that I really enjoyed this webinar, of course.
Oh, good. Yeah, we enjoyed it having you, of course. So Anne?
I actually do have some announcements.
Yeah.
There's a great post, speaking of kind of the phases of the core editor. Matthias just posted a really awesome update kind of showing what's happening with site editing. And I think it's really worth reading through and kind of getting excited about it. I read through it and just kind of had my brain exploding with ideas, and hopefully it does the same for you. And I also just want to give a big props to the 5.16. That release just came out this week, and it was the first women and non-binary led release for WordPress, which feels pretty historic. So I just wanted to shout that out, and major props to everyone involved in that effort. And then for keeping in touch, I'm a weird millennial who doesn't like social media, but I blog at nomad.blog, and you can find me on WordPress.org Slack as Anne Zazu. So I feel free to reach out to me either place.
All right. And that's it. Big thank you to the viewers. Big thank you to you for being here. You can reach out to me on Twitter or on the WordPress Slack. You could also send emails to polly@gutenbergtimes.com. A recording of this will be available in a few minutes on YouTube, and I'll share it, of course, also with a panelist, so you can share it, but also over the social media. And well, it was a joy talking to you. And yeah, I wish everybody wonderful holidays. Happy Hanukkah to Israel and the Jewish community. Merry Christmas and happy holiday. This is also the last show of the year from Gutenberg Times. We won't have a changelog because the team, we always do a changelog podcast after the release, and the release moved a week into my holiday or into my vacation time. So we will be back January 8th with a changelog, and we will cover 2 Gutenberg releases. And so that's my announcement. I wish you all, good evening, a nice afternoon, and thank you for watching and being with me here.
Thanks so much, Birgit. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.